Good evening and welcome to a fairly gloomy summer's evening here at Heathrow's Terminal 5. Guys, just behind me is the nose to a British Airways Concorde, and that can only mean one thing. For this evening, we're in the Concorde Lounge, which means that tonight we're going to be flying at first class with British Airways on board the channel for the very first time. Been looking forward to this one for quite some time. We've never been able to do first class together, so stay tuned for what's going to be a really interesting experience. On this particular ticket, we're going to be going through to Abu Dhabi. This was a cash ticket, so stay tuned to the end and I'll give you some insight into exactly how much we paid together. But for now, let's go back a couple of hours in time. We'll get checked in, you'll see my fantastic couple of hours here in the lounge, and then it'll be time to jump on board. Stay tuned. Alrighty, so here we go guys. This is going to be a bit of a longer one, so get settled, get comfortable, because I'm really looking forward to bringing this one to you. At the time of recording, it really has been a very average summer so far. It was the most drab of evenings on that particular night as I headed to Heathrow's Terminal 5. I decided to go with the pod park, and it's been ages since I've done this, and this has long been one of my favourite ways of getting over to Heathrow's Terminal 5, so a little bit more on this just now. Now, for those of you who use London Heathrow regularly will know how expensive the car parking has got in recent times, certainly since COVID. I managed to get the pod park in on this particular occasion for a really good rate. If you do get the opportunity to use it, if it's not much more expensive than the standard official parking, I would highly recommend it. It's a nice quick journey into the terminal on these little pods. They have their own private tracks, you don't have to worry about any traffic getting up into the terminal, and it's a nice quick journey. From here, we'll be transiting by foot to the opposite end of the terminal where they've got the first class check-in wing. I haven't been able to use that for quite some time, but I can just see up behind me, that's T5. So let's jump off the pod and we'll get started with the check-in. Now, if you are using the first wing here at Terminal 5, be aware it is right down at the very far end of the terminal. So it's a bit of a walk. Now, for me this evening, frankly, I'm quite glad of the exercise, but if you are being dropped off by car, I would recommend asking for the first wing and just making sure the cab or the relative, whoever's taking you down, does go on to the very end. It's going to save you quite a lot of walking, and if time is not on your side, unlike for me this evening, it could actually be quite vital just there for you. From there, you'll just go straight on through to the first class wing, which we'll check out just now. The first wing is something that's made available for first class passengers and also gold status members and above with British Airways. It always secures a really nice speedy journey through the check-in and then on through private security. It's been ages since I've had the pleasure of being able to do it, having lost my status a few years ago as part of this YouTube project. The check-in was wonderfully well managed, and it wasn't long before I was heading through that private security and on to the lounge. Now, if you are flying with BA from Heathrow in their first class, one little detail to be aware of as you go through the first wing and indeed private security, you'll come through to the first class lounge. That, ironically, isn't going to be the one that you're heading to. It's going to be the Concorde Room. It's a really exclusive space just for people with very, very, very top tier status, and then also, of course, a first class ticket. So that's where we'll head. We'll be discovering it together tonight. I've never once even been in there before, so can't wait. Let's get in there. Quick couple of shots then of the first class lounge as we take a tour through. As you exit the lounge, you'll see the Concorde Room straight ahead of you. I was stepping in there for the very first time, as mentioned that evening. I couldn't wait. I was so excited. And as I got through, the vibe was absolutely incredible. I went straight through to the Concorde dining because although we'll eat on board, I was keen to get through 3 courses just to show you the experience just here as well. So, first drink, here we go. It's a good start.
And the good starts very much continued. I went for the smoked trout and caviar for my starter, then went on to the red wine ready for my main course. Was keen not to eat too much for the main course, so went with a little beef stew type of number. Sadly, on the menu, it only indicated around 200 calories. I could see exactly where that was made up. Still feeling really quite hungry with it very much being dinner time. I did roll straight in to the burger. And after the main course, or indeed main courses, I then went on to dessert. This was to be via a separate dessert menu. Must say the service throughout my dining experience in the Concorde Room was absolutely wonderful. I opted for a glass of the dessert wine, which was superb, and also the chocolate cheesecake. I found as though the food was a little bit up and down. The starter and dessert, which you'll see in just a moment, was absolutely fantastic. Main courses, a little bit pub grub kind of standard. I thought this was a really good opportunity for British Airways to showcase the absolute best of British. Almost imagined a wonderful beef Wellington with a lovely filet mignon through the middle. I think this could be something that they could look at just to up the experience ever so slightly, but overall, a very decent start. After my time in the dining room, I then went to check out some of the facilities. Didn't have a shower on this occasion. They do have these private bathrooms, but like all of the bathrooms across the lounges at T5, they have a very prefabricated, cheap makeup. They really need to focus on these. They're such a big step down from, as you'll see, the rest of the lounge. I thought the various different seating areas were absolutely fab, particularly the sofas gathered around the aesthetic fireplaces. In the winter, this will be just so cozy. From the inside areas, you can then head out onto the Concorde Room terrace. From there, you can do the dining with an absolutely fantastic view. You've also got a nose from an ex-British Airways Concorde just there, and some wonderful various different seating areas. Love these various different privacy dividers throughout. They just help to break up the space and add an element of additional privacy. Little read up just there on that nose cone for you as well. Following my exploration of the terrace, I just couldn't leave the lounge without a visit to the bar. It's one of the first things you'll notice as you walk on in. It looks absolutely stunning. Some more panning shots of it to follow in just a moment. Really decent cocktail menu, good wine menu. Couldn't resist ordering one of their classic cocktails to get me started just before the flight. And with time getting on and with the lounge starting to empty, there was only really one thing for me to do, and that was to head to the board, see where my flight was going to be departing from, and start moving on that particular evening. It really was a wonderful start to my first class experience with British Airways, and I'd advise anyone, if you're going to be doing it, particularly for the first time, to allow lots of time to get to the Concorde Lounge before your flight and have a very similarly enjoyable experience to the one that I had.
What an awesome time that was in the lounge. For now, going to be heading off to Satellite Seagate, so it's going to be a little bit of a journey this evening through to there, but frankly, I need a bit of a walk because I need to build up an appetite for some more onboard food to bring that to you, so stay tuned to the next bit of the video. Just ahead of then, guys, if this is your first time watching the channel, I've got so much content on the channel from British Airways and so many other airlines, so if you hit that subscribe button, the content will be recommended to you that little bit more often. Stay tuned. Next up, we're going to be boarding.
After a smooth underground transit, it was then arriving to Satellite Terminal C, where we got our first view of our aircraft. It was to be a Boeing 787. It's one of the Dash 9s, so at the time of recording, it hadn't yet had its update, so I was expecting a slightly older interior, but frankly, I couldn't wait to jump on board and check out first class.
Alrighty, so that's us jumping on board. Nice and efficient at the boarding gate tonight. Just taking a look around, I don't think it's going to be a particularly full service. That all being said, up front in first, I guess it doesn't really make too much difference. The luxuries, right? Let's jump on and see what it's like.
I jumped on through the main door, through a very small Club World cabin, into first class, arranged with the seats in a 1-2-1 format, just 2 rows, so it's a nice, small, intimate cabin right at the front of the plane with a separate toilet for first class just there. Really liked the overall look and feel of the cabin, particularly liked all of these little black touches, almost carbon fibre-esque. It looked really very smart indeed. I was escorted to my seat from the moment I got on. No sooner had I arrived than another member of the crew came by with the pyjamas, with the amenity kit. It just looked fantastic. My suitcase just there for reference to show you the size of this seat. As soon as you sit into the suite, it's quite obvious that it's a big step up from business class, so much more space. You'll see a little bit later the fact I couldn't even touch the leg rest without bringing it forward. It looked absolutely superb. One of the aspects that really stands out when it comes to first class is just how much additional storage and indeed space that you have. Just towards the front of me, onto the right hand side, was a separate storage area. This was a really nice deep bin where you could keep bedding and other such items throughout the flight. The ledge was also quite useful for keeping my iPad on, for example, just there. Just down to my left on the window side was then an additional little cubby which featured a range of different charging options and also the controls for the entertainment system. This lid was looking a little bit tired. We'll come back to that later into the review. And continuing with the theme of storage was then a separate vanity area, again just up to my left hand side. There was then also quite a big cubby for additional storage as well. As you'd expect, all of the controls for the seat were in very easy reach. I'll show you the function of these a little bit later into the review as well. And as we're exploring the seat, a good time to check out the table as well. Love this design, leather on one side, that black carbon fibre-esque effect on the other. Again, was looking ever so slightly tired. Would be great to see British Airways just keeping up to date some of these aspects as the aircrafts get that bit older. And then last but certainly not least, a wonderful storage area just towards the aisle side, which was ideal for my jacket on that evening. In addition to the pyjamas and the amenity kit, there was also this very high-end headset that we'll check out a little bit later on. With the cabin so light, let's check out this amenity kit. Thought it looked absolutely superb. It was very similar to one that I had when flying first with British Airways many years ago. Particularly liked the design. I would assume this one was a little bit more focused at the guys. Overall, absolutely fantastic. Had all of the lotions and potions that you'd expect. Everything felt very high-end indeed.
Alrighty, so that's me on board. Really good first impression so far. So here's the champagne and here's to what's going to be an excellent flight over to Abu Dhabi.
At this moment in time, the pre-departure service was well underway. The champagne was flowing. I opted for a glass of it, also accompanied with some nuts and this warm towel, which I thought was really nicely presented. Yep, that definitely did the job. Just before we pushed back, the crew brought around some bottles of water. Thought this was a really nice touch because they were ever so slightly chilled as opposed to just left at the seat where they'd be that little bit warmer. So I thought that was quite a nice little touch. Final word on the lighting in the suite. I thought this was really thoughtfully designed. We'll see this in use as we take off and the cabin goes that little bit darker. But that moment in time, I was just settling back into the seat, thinking how lucky I was, frankly, to be flying in first with British Airways. The level of space is just absolutely tremendous, so much more really than anyone needs. Club World is more than enough for me, but let's get pushed back and check out the in-flight experience. And just before we take off, here's the lighting in operation. Very simply, you choose the function that you'd like to change, and then it's then simply a twist of the dial. Thought this was really smart, very minimalist in terms of its design, but it did have that touch of real quality to the feel of everything. Top marks on that front. For now, let's bring down the volume of the music, and we'll get on our way to Abu Dhabi. Oh, it really was a grim departure on that evening. I couldn't wait to get to those lovely, warm desert climes. As we took off, it gave me the opportunity to head up to the bathroom, check that one out. It was a separate toilet as mentioned at the front for first class passengers. Wasn't particularly anything super special. I did, however, though, like those slightly higher quality towels that came out to dry your hands with. And as we're getting settled into the flight, a good time to check out the entertainment system. This was British Airways' standard High Life entertainment. It's one of the best, I think, in the world. Has a really good range of different options. In terms of the first class experience, you have a wonderful big screen to watch everything on. You do generally need that controller for the screen because it is that little bit further away from you than you'd be used to perhaps from the business class. So just sit back into the seat and enjoy all of the controls from the luxury of your own seat. The seatback entertainment screen was then paired with these wonderful high quality headsets. This is a good step above what you get back in the business class. Thought these had a real feeling of quality about them, which is everything you'd want, of course, being up front in the first class. These were done via Meridian. And finally, the all-important Wi-Fi. Well, in first class, it's completely free for the whole duration of the flight, so it's really nice taking advantage of that throughout the duration of my journey that evening. And after what felt a really long time, we were finally above that cloud layer. Despite it being after 11 o'clock local time, there was still a beautiful slither of light still in the skies as I headed to the bathroom to get changed into my pajamas for the rest of the flight. As I got back to my seat, the canapes were starting to come around, so I got nice and comfortable. Despite me being 6 foot or 180 centimeters, I could barely even touch the footrest. It showed just how big this seat was. Thankfully for me, and particularly for those a little bit shorter, you can bring it that bit closer to yourself. And yes, you did hear that right, canapes were starting to come around, and despite just how many courses I managed to get through in the lounge, I couldn't resist bringing these to the crew. Really did twist my arm on that evening. They're such feeders, the British Airways crew, but my goodness, were they doing a fantastic job. Good time now to start running through the menu, so we'll start taking a look at this. Now, despite the time of departure, there was a full main meal service that was served before bedtime, so we'll get into that, and I promise you a number of courses as we progress through. There was then also to be a full breakfast service just before landing, so despite a 6 or so hour experience on that evening, it was great to see British Airways laying on 2 such full services. Beyond the food and non-alcoholic drink options, British Airways then featured a good range of different wines, nice write-up about each one, and then also a separate cocktail menu overleaf, which we'll check out. In no time at all, the crew were busy coming around, getting the table looking superb, and at that point I was all ready for the meal service. I opted for the salmon to start. I so often go for the seafood first when comparing premium cabins because it just gives me a good excuse to go for a glass of the white wine before then comparing the red with the main course. I opted for a glass of the Dog Point. It was a new white wine from New Zealand. Had a little bit of a strange taste to it, truth be told, a little bit spicy perhaps, but overall, as I then got into the food, it didn't taste too bad at all. And for my main course, I went for the Welsh lamb with rice macbous. It was a nice pairing really between a traditional English and also slightly Middle Eastern meal. This went very nicely with a glass of the 2012 Bordeaux. So let's see how this one matches up to the previous experience of the whites from New Zealand. Yep, that one was absolutely phenomenal. I went with the soft-baked chocolate tart to finish. It was the most indulgent dessert I've ever had in the air. It was absolutely wonderful. That was then paired with a glass of the dessert wine. At this point, I was feeling so incredibly full, getting slightly behind, but just for you guys, let's give this one a go and see what it's like. And at the end of what felt like an incredible food marathon, I was finally done. The crew very kindly made up my bed for me, incredibly spacious, looked absolutely wonderful, and I couldn't wait to jump in for a few hours sleep before we land. Of course, one of the big advantages of first class is the additional space that you get, and that translates through to the bed situation so well indeed. Here you can see with me in the bed the fact that my feet don't go down a tunnel, so you do get an awful lot of additional space. In terms of privacy, there were no doors that were shut on this particular suite. That all being said, there were no direct sight lines with any other passengers, so it made for a really nice, private and very comfortable experience. Alrighty, so in what felt like no time at all, that desert sun was already shining right the way through. I just had time for a quick orange juice and also a freshen up towel as we started our final descent down into Abu Dhabi. So what then about my final thoughts with British Airways in first class? Well, you've seen the full experience. I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. For me personally, I thought it was a pretty good rendition of first class, saving a few maintenance pieces in the cabin. Would I be paying thousands and thousands for it? No, probably not. I think their new Club Suites product is more than good enough for me for a long haul service. One, however, cannot deny how big a step this was above many aspects of the business class offering, particularly in terms of service, the food and also the space afforded. I paid just £1,100 for this particular flight. Overall, money very well spent indeed. If you're looking to book with British Airways but would first like to check out the business class, I recently flew for 14 hours with them across to Tokyo, and I'll put my review of that one in the bottom right hand side just now. Otherwise, all that's left for me to say is to thank you so much for watching the video. I really hope it was useful. If so, don't forget to drop it a like, and don't forget to subscribe. If you forget to subscribe to the channel, it will help you keep fully up to date with everything that's going on. Otherwise, very much looking forward to welcoming you to another one real soon.